Hello. Do you ever wonder about why life seems to be so difficult? Why you're constantly putting out fires with the habits in your home, constantly instructing your kids with do's and don'ts, and really struggling just with yourself and having yourself realize that you have desires to do certain things and yet you just can't quite seem to get it done? Well, if that's the case, I would like to invite you for the next 15 minutes with me. I'm Dollie Freeman. I am the host of the Charlotte Mason Mastery Show. I'm an expert on raising self educating children with the Charlotte Mason method. And today I'm going to be sharing with you part two of a four-part mini series I'm calling Charlotte Mason Explained. So, if this is something that you're wanting to know how to secure smooth and easy days, I encourage you to stay along. Today, I'm going to be talking with form good habits in yourself and your children. I'm going to be teaching you, and then I'll show up live with you in the comments. So feel free to make your comments all along, and I'm here to answer questions on today's episode as well. So I look forward to seeing you in the comments. And if you know someone who would benefit from this, tag them in the content or in the comments and invite them to learn along with you. All right, so let's get started with today's topic. You're going to be learning about three things. You're going to be learning about what makes habit formation in education and why it's so important. And then you're going to be learning about three types of parenting habits to be aware of. And then finally, you're going to be learning about how to form good habits in yourself and your children. This is a really good episode. This is something that a lot of people really shy away from because habits are hard. It's really hard when you get excited and you get moving and then you lose your motivation and your momentum in it, and you're really not sure how to get them to stick. So I really want to encourage you to stay along with me. All right, so let's talk about this number one thing about what makes habit formation in education. Charlotte Mason says that habit formation is education and education is habit formation. That is what Charlotte Mason says. So when I'm trying to answer this question, I want to go deep into Charlotte Mason and say, what is it that makes Charlotte Mason so adamant that habit formation is education and why it should be more important than that of our intellectual studies, so to speak. And it's because Charlotte Mason says we're mere creatures of habit, meaning that 99, 100% of everything we do day in and day out is done because of habits, the habits that we're forming. And if you don't know, habits is simply nature in action growing stronger by exercise. So I want you to be thinking about that the more we do something, the stronger that action is going to become because we are repeating it. And that is simple. So when you recognize that we're mere creatures and 99% of what we do because of habits. This is why Charlotte Mason says that formation of habits is education, and education is the formation of habits. So, how much of your day in your homeschool are you dedicating to forming good habits? That leads me right into this next part of the three types of parenting habits to be aware of. So, you, believe it or not, are creating habits either intentionally or unintentionally. You should understand that now because 99%, 99 of 100% of what we do, we're doing by habit. And habit is action that is being repeated, that it grows stronger. So when we recognize that, we have to realize that we are either intentionally or unintentionally being growing habits in our children. Charlotte Mason says every day, every hour, we are either passively, which is one type, or actively, which is the second type of parenting habits. We are actively or passively forming habits in our children every day, every hour. And when you recognize that it's because of repeated actions, growing stronger with exercise is why she is so right. And even if you're not intentionally focusing on habits, that's where the passive happening habits for your parenting is actually forming those bad habits. So I hate to tell you, mama, and I'm here for you, this is going to hurt, but those bad habits are because you've allowed them. So those very first type of parenting habit is passive. In our passive parenting, we are allowing the exercise of actions that are forming bad habits. Ouch. I know it hurts. I know because I've been there, I've done that, and I'm still doing it. When I'm seeing my children falling back into bad habits, when I see myself falling into bad habits, it's like, ugh, I'm allowing those things to happen by allowing them to be exercised. So that brings me into the second type of parenting habits, and that is active. Active is when intentions and purpose comes into your day. Now, every day, every hour, you are intentionally and purposely building good habits in yourself and your children. So, this is where we are becoming, what type of homeschooling day do we want? What type of actions do we want our children to grow stronger in through exercise? And when we become intentional about that, when we get really solid on being consistent in our own habits, being consistent in our parenting, being consistent in our scheduling, in our assignments, and in our routines, when we're doing those things, what's happening is we're becoming active and we're becoming the second habits of parenting. Here is the beautiful thing that brings us to the third type of parenting habits, and that is passive, wise, passive parenting. What that means is that we get back into this place of allowing things to happen. But now we're not allowing things to happen because they're building bad habits. We are now wisely allowing things to happen because we have taken those intentions, taken those purpose in our homeschooling days in order to be able to raise our children to go the right way, to grow to fruitful purpose, and to become self educating. When we have all three of those going the right way, growing to fruitful purpose, and self educating in their education, next thing you know is that you can take that step back and become masterly and active in what's going on in your home. And that's where that wise passive parenting can happen. But it can never get to that point unless if you intentionally and willingly and forcefully put new habits in your life as a parent and become consistent in the intentions and purpose of your homeschooling days to move from being a passive parent that just allows things to happen and bad habits grow because of the exercise of them. We move into that passive parenting where we're becoming intentional and purpose about good habits, that we're doing everything in our power and our strength to exercise those things that will lead our children to go the right way and grow to fruitful purpose. When they're self-directing, they're growing to fruitful purpose. And next thing you know, when we see they're choosing to go the right way on their own, when they're growing fruitful in it, when they're self educating because they've moved into independent learning, and learning now becomes a part of their life. It's not just what we assign, but they're learning beyond the books. When we get to that point, we've stepped into that wise passive parenting. And that is where you secure the smooth and easy days of homeschooling. That is where you're seeing the fruits of your labor playing out in the conduct of your children. And the whole thing of what this is able for you to do is this number three. So, how do I get there, Dolly? You get there to form the good habits in yourself and in your children by making sure you do 40 days of unbroken sequence. Charlotte Mason says 20 to 40 days, but what I found is 20 is not enough. When we get to 20 days, we can become in that allowance stage where we allow our children to step back because they've been doing so good. I have found that between the 20 and 40 days of unbroken sequence is that place where a child, if we lose our watchfulness, if we do not stay intentional and purposeful during the 21 to 40 days, those habits do not stick. So that's why I teach 40 days of unbroken sequence. And Charlotte Mason says the longer you can do that in unbroken sequence, and that's the key. I want you to write that down somewhere. Unbroken sequence, meaning that you never take a day off. You never stop doing and get back on the wagon. We don't do that. It's unbroken sequence. When you can do that, Charlotte Mason says that it becomes 10 nature, meaning that it would cause you great harm to stop doing it. It's become part of who you are, it becomes your nature. You're known by these things. So when you realize that this 40-day of unbroken sequence is what leads to that, you'll become more intentional and purposed in it. And the reward of it, mama, is that intentions of being active in the formation of habits in yourself and your children will lead to that passive, that wise passive parenting that gives you the fruits of your labor. I'm so excited about that. Now, if you like these short teachings and you would like more of them, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Charlotte Mason Mastery by going to charlottemasonmastery.com/search and be able to search these shows. You'll have the database of my shows, past and future, and be able to search and get right to the topics by just searching the keyword or phrases. And as long as you stay an active subscriber, you have access completely free as a bonus as a subscriber. This is a really good, I've actually been getting emails already from people going through it about how wonderful those things are, and it's really helping them. They're finding all kinds of nuggets hidden inside. So I would love to invite you there. Now, let's get into the comments and see if you have any questions. Hello to Stephanie. It's nice to have you here. And go ahead and put any questions. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. But here is what I'm going to kind of pull it all together is in a quick review is that we are mere creatures of habit, that 99, 100% of what we do by habits. And the bad habits in your home is caused from your passive parenting. If you want to change those bad habits, mama, you've got to become what Charlotte Mason says as an active parent, meaning that you become intentional and purposeful in the things that are being exercised in your homes, those actions that are being repeated and growing strong through exercise. That is how you change from bad habits to good habits. Then, when you are doing this enough with unbroken sequence of 40 days, then your children are starting to take ownership of their actions. They're doing it by mere habit, and it's becoming an education to them so that they will go the right way, grow to fruitful purpose, and become self educating because the ownership is something that they crave and desire and long for. And when that happens, you step into that third type of parenting, which is wise passiveness, where we are allowing things to happen because we know beforehand that our children will go the right way, grow to fruitful purpose, and they're self educating beyond the books. All right. So let me know really quick. I'm looking for comments, questions on today's episode, and looking forward to interacting with you. 40 days of unbroken sequence. That's good. That is something I will implement with myself and my daughter. Thank you. You're welcome. That unbroken sequence is the thing. And when we think 40 days, it is easy to then think, I did that this many times. So I have a planner that I actually just write in the things that I want to do. And I literally say one of 40, two of 40, three of 40 whenever I'm working on a new habit myself. It's easy to look on a calendar and say, okay, I did this, whether it be Bible reading or exercising or eating more fruits or vegetables or reading every day for myself, whatever it be. I just write one of 40. You don't have to get really crazy on this. Make it simple so that you can track it and then be excited about it. And kids love to be able to mark off those 40 days. So what happens if they break 40 days? Got to start fresh. That's the whole purpose is we're starting fresh. We're being intentional and purposeful. Kevin says, I am still new around here and have only heard you a few times, but each time I hear you talk, it is always so good. How do you go about determining some habits to start? Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I'm glad it's been worth your time. That's my goal. I will have to tell you that the best way to start any habit is to start with willing obedience. If your children are not willingly obeying you, now that's different from instant obedience. Instant obedience doesn't get to the heart. The heart is willing obedient. Our children can still do what we tell them to do in the instance, but if their heart's not there, we're not going to really train them to go the right way. We're just going to train them on the mere, Charlotte Mason calls it mere veneer laid on the surface of a child's nature. We don't want that mere veneer. We want it to penetrate into their hearts and make a difference so that they will not only go the right way, but grow to fruitful purpose. So start with willing obedience. Attentiveness is another one. But if you're working on the mechanics of the things at home, I really recommend you to start with the things that you struggle with the most in your day, the things that you're saying do's and don'ts to constantly. If you start at those really hard things in your day, knowing that willing obedience is secured, you're able to then make progress. Renee says, I find it really hard to keep a solid routine when we have appointments or co ops or other things interrupting our normal days. How to keep a good habit going when life is crazy. Renee, I talk about that inside the routine approach. And sadly, I just closed that a couple weeks ago, but be watching for it. You might be able to see it opening up soon. But the routines are not the same routine. You have to recognize that life is different each and every day. And sometimes an hour can be look completely different. So you have to master the skill of recognizing routines uniquely, as well as learning how to let those interruptions um, focus on those interruptions that you can change, and then figure out a way to overcome those interruptions you have no control over. So, that's what I recognize is don't be all about the same routine. Don't be stuck in this pattern of thinking it has to fit one way. Our lives are never the same each and every day. As a homeschool mom, we have too many things to say that our life looks just like that every day. The key is making it natural and make it workable. If you know that this is natural, that it's something that just feels right, it feels perfect for your unique dynamics of your family, and it's workable, meaning it's working to get the most productivity of your day, then it works. And you just need to focus on that. Okay, this is my last question for today. Kevin says, also, how many new habits should we start at once? A whole new school routine or tackling one at a time, such as chore time? So here's the key to that. We tend to overwhelm ourselves, we moms, don't we? And Charlotte Mason's talking about one habit at a time. But there's so many different habits. I mean, let's be honest. Are we going to only focus on teaching our children to brush their teeth every day and not think of anything else? No, we're not. That is not even possible. There's just too many parts of a day. And we have to remind ourselves that actions repeated or habits are simply nature in action, growing strong by exercise. So, those things that they're doing day in and day out that's causing a lot of strife, it's hard to only pick one. It's impossible. I've been there, I've done that. Oops, I'm sorry, just hit my screen. I've been there and I've done that. And I know for my own experience that I cannot just focus on one. But if I focus on too many, then I myself are wearing me out because I'm one person to many people and many habits. So what I would recommend you to do is focus on key habits at different times of the day. We only brush our teeth at certain times, right? It's not an all day thing. So we can be watchful and attentive at one point or 2 points in a day and be okay with that. It's not something we have to watch all day long. So when we put in these smaller habits with perhaps the bigger habits, it's much easier to feel like you're making progress. And so just don't get to the point of overwhelm. Say, can I handle being watchful in this area while still working on this area? Because habits will not happen if you're not being active, and active implies that you're being involved and you're being watchful and you're really making sure your children are, and yourself, because habit starts with mama first, right? It's a lot of habits in you helping your children form habits. So you got to break some things in order for things to work in place. All right, so I hope that helps. Now, next week, I'm going to be doing into part three of the four-part series, Charlotte Mason Explains. And I'm going to be talking to you about supplying ideas that produce thoughts. This is really the pinnacle of Charlotte Mason. So if you maybe just found me and not really sure too much about Charlotte Mason, that's okay. This next week is going to give you a good idea of why Charlotte Mason looks so different from the educational system out there and why it's so important to be aware of what her method does. And as you might be hearing from last week, I talked about method implies two things: a way to an end and a step by step progress in that way. So, if you didn't listen to last week, I really encourage you to do that because it's so, so good. And I'm really simplifying the 6 volumes of Charlotte Mason into four small teachings because it really is not about a lot of actions, it's key actions done repeatedly. All right, you all. I look forward, and you're completely welcome for this. It's a joy to teach you. I'll see you next week at the same time, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. at Charlotte Mason Mastery on Facebook and on YouTube. Until then, bye for now.